I had just closed from work one Tuesday evening. The air was fresh, carrying that calm that settles in when the day has given all it could. Work hadn't been hectic, no rushing deadlines, no tense meetings, just one of those rare days that ended without exhaustion clinging to my shoulders. I stood by the stair rail outside the building, phone in hand, trying to get a taxi home. My car was still at the mechanic's shop, and I had learned the hard way that public transport at that hour required patience. As I waited, I watched people filter out in small groups, their conversations fading into the hum of the evening. That was when I heard my name. Hayath. The voice came from the direction of the departmental exits. I looked up and saw Samson waving, his tie loosened, his jacket slung over one arm. There was an ease about him, the kind that suggested he'd had a good day too. I smiled, pocketed my phone, and turned away from the stair rail. "Samson," I said as I walked toward him. We met halfway between the exits, exchanging the kind of casual greeting shared by people who had crossed paths often enough to be familiar but not routine. He asked how my day had gone, and I told him it had been surprisingly smooth. He laughed and said days like that were rare gifts, best acknowledged before they disappeared. As we stood there, the conversation drifted, from work to life, from complaints to quiet reflections. In that moment, waiting for a ride no longer felt like an inconvenience. It felt like a pause I didn't know I needed. The evening stretched gently before us, unhurried. That was when Samson suggested we visit his auntie. We were both bachelors, with no pressing responsibilities waiting for us at home, no meals to rush back to or calls demanding our attention. The idea felt good. We hailed a taxi and rode across to another part of the city, watching familiar streets give way to quieter roads and softer lights. The hum of the city followed us, but it felt distant, like background music to a moment that was still forming. When we arrived, Samson's aunt's house was welcoming and well kept. The lounge was softly lit, and seated there were two ladies who bore a clear resemblance to each other. They were deep in conversation, their voices gentle and animated. They looked up, smiled in greeting, welcomed us warmly, and then continued where they had left off, their familiarity filling the room with ease. As we waited to see Samson's aunt, Samson began exchanging light conversation with his cousins. Laughter moved easily between them, the kind that comes from shared history and comfort. I listened quietly, taking in the ambience of the room, feeling like a guest but not an outsider. That was when I noticed her. Nora sat among them, fully present in the moment, listening as much as she spoke. When she laughed, it wasn't forced or loud, it was natural, effortless. She smiled as she talked, a smile that seemed to linger even after the conversation moved on. There was something about the way she carried herself, calm, attentive, genuine, that drew my attention without her trying. It was the first time I would meet Nora, though at that moment I didn't know how significant that meeting would become. I only knew that, somehow, in the middle of an ordinary evening that had begun with nothing more than waiting for a taxi, something quietly memorable had just entered the room. Samson's auntie later joined us. She was warm, kind, and genuinely welcoming, creating an atmosphere that immediately put everyone at ease. She ensured we were well taken care of, serving us a generous meal and thoughtfully packed extra food for us to take home, a gesture that reflected her hospitality and generosity. The following day, I met Samson again at work. Driven by a keen interest to learn more about Nora and her family, I asked him about her background. He explained that Nora was the fourth child in a family of 6. She grew up in a large household and held a unique position as the first daughter, with 3 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. Samson, curious by nature, asked why I was so interested in learning more about Nora. I responded honestly, telling him that I liked her and was drawn to the calm, positive aura she carried. In response, he spoke warmly about his auntie and her family, describing them as genuinely pleasant and kind-hearted people. He went on to explain that his early years were spent under his auntie's care, as his immediate family faced significant difficulties while he was growing up. During that period, his auntie opened her home to him and his siblings, taking them in and providing a stable environment. She was gentle and accommodating, even allowing them to freely practice their Christian faith, despite being a Muslim herself. Rather than seeing religion as a point of division, she acknowledged and embraced the interfaith nature of their family, where some members were Muslims and others Christians. He reassured me not to worry and said he would speak to her and tell her about me. Several weeks passed before the subject came up again, allowing time for thought and consideration. When we eventually revisited the matter, he handed me her phone number with a knowing smile. He cautioned that she would not be easy to approach, but added wisely that good things rarely come easily. He explained that she agreed to share her number partly because he was personally involved and, more importantly, because of the strong and respectful relationship they shared. Out of respect for him and the beautiful bond between them, she decided to give me a chance, at least enough to talk to me and see where the conversation might lead. Our initial conversations were brief and noticeably awkward. She offered little space for questions and made no deliberate effort to get to know me in return. I had anticipated this distance from the start, so it did not deter me. Instead, I remained patient and persistent, continuing to reach out even when it was clear that some of my calls were intentionally left unanswered. Months passed slowly before Nora truly acknowledged me. That moment, when it finally came, felt less like a sudden shift and more like the quiet reward of consistency, patience, and resolve. Nora made her intentions clear from the outset. She explained that she was not interested in a prolonged courtship and did not believe in dating outside the bounds of marriage. As a practicing Muslim woman, she was deeply committed to keeping her interactions halal and aligned with her faith. She encouraged us to reflect carefully and with sincerity, asking that we both consider our intentions and expectations. Rather than allowing emotions to lead, she wanted clarity and purpose, to decide thoughtfully whether marriage was truly what we desired, and if we were ready to take that step together. I took her words seriously. It urged me to look inward with honesty and intention. Her values aligned deeply with the life I had come to embrace, a life shaped by lessons learned after years of choices I had grown to regret. I had changed, not abruptly, but intentionally, guided by reflection and a desire for peace rather than excess. The lifestyle I now lived was calmer, more grounded, and brought with it a sense of fulfillment I had long been searching for. In this new way of living, I found happiness not in fleeting moments, but in quiet consistency and purpose. It was a happiness rooted in growth and awareness. I spent time reflecting on my values, my readiness, and the weight of commitment. When I reached out again, I told her that I respected her principles and admired the discipline with which she guarded them. More importantly, I shared that I was willing to approach her in a manner that honored our faith and her boundaries. I asked for her permission to speak to her father and formally express my intentions. With clarity and mutual understanding, the path ahead became unmistakably clear. Our nikah marriage was simple yet profoundly beautiful, grounded in faith, intention, and humility. Both our families were present, gathered in unity and shared joy. It was a moment defined by peace, sincerity, and the grace of beginning a new chapter together. To this day, I do not hesitate to say that marrying Nora was one of the best decisions I have ever made in my life. Marriage with her was nothing short of beautiful, filled with understanding, compassion, and harmony. She had a way of making life feel lighter, of transforming ordinary moments into ones of ease and peace. Beyond her kindness, it was her unwavering faith that left the deepest impression. Grounded in her belief in God, she approached life with clarity and purpose, and her devotion naturally shaped the way she nurtured our home and our relationship. Her faith had not only strengthened her character but had also made it easier for me to draw closer to God, to embrace spirituality with sincerity, and to find peace in everyday living. Challenges felt manageable, joy felt abundant, and the quiet simplicity of our shared life reflected a harmony that brought peace. For a time, life continued smoothly, filled with love, faith, and mutual respect. But a challenge arose that neither of us had anticipated, our difficulty in conceiving. At first, we approached it with patience and hope, trusting that in God's timing, things would fall into place. But months passed and the weight of uncertainty began to take its toll on both of us. When the moment arrived to learn more about the situation. That day, my wife had to visit a sick relative, and we agreed that I would go alone to collect the results from the doctor. My heart was heavy, filled with a mix of anxiety and quiet hope. When I received the results, I was confronted with an unexpected truth.
Before we go on, pause the video and share your thoughts. When love is fueled by desperation, is it still love, or has it become a dangerous obsession? And, if you could give your spouse their greatest wish by committing an unforgivable act, would you do it?
When I received the results, I was confronted with an unexpected truth. I was the one facing challenges with fertility. The doctor spoke gently, as if softness might blunt the edges of his words. As he looked at me over his glasses and said, "I am afraid your sperm count is extremely low. This would explain difficulties with conception. Infertility can be caused by underlying health issues or lifestyle factors. Let's see what's really going on." It was a moment of profound vulnerability. I soon realized after our long discussion that my past had caught up with me in the most personal and painful way. I had started young, not with needles or alleyways, but with curiosity and confidence. Pills to stay awake. Powder to feel untouchable. I tried them all and they felt good at the time. Every substance promised something different: focus, courage, silence and joy. I was the kind of addict no one ever noticed. The years piled up quietly, unnoticed. But I cleaned up, moved far away from that life, and buried it deep, where it stayed hidden. But years of reckless choices had left lasting consequences, severely reducing my chances of being able to conceive. Overwhelmed by shame, fear, and a sense of failure, I made the difficult decision to hide the truth from Nora. I could not bring myself to burden her with my past mistakes or the harsh reality that our dream of starting a family might never unfold in the way we had hoped. Instead, I carried the secret alone, internalizing the pain and guilt. I could only hope that the nutritional support and treatments the doctor recommended would give my body a fighting chance, and that together, we might still be able to conceive. But nothing seemed to change, and with each passing day, my hope began to wither. Frustration gnawed at me until it morphed into a suffocating desperation, one that settled deep in my chest and refused to let go. The desperation continued as a quiet ache, a fear that I was not enough for the woman I loved. I became consumed by a singular, frantic goal: to protect my wife from the truth. I was terrified that my inadequacy and past would drive her away. One afternoon during a break at work, I was so lost in these dark thoughts that I didn't notice my colleague, Raul, standing beside me. Seeing my distress, he pushed until I broke. After making him promise secrecy, I confessed my burden. I told him I was the reason we couldn't have a child, and I was paralyzed by the fear of losing her. After a long, heavy silence, Raul offered a suggestion that felt like a lifeline, though it was laced with poison. "She does not have to know," he whispered. He suggested a plan involving a getaway, a sleeping aid, and a stranger to provide what I could not. He told me that my wife would not know, that the drug would make her sleep deep while the stranger does the act. At first, I was repulsed. I told him I could never do it, the betrayal felt unthinkable. But as the months went by, my desperation turned into a fever. The voices of my own insecurity drowned out my conscience. I eventually gave in. I arranged a vacation in another state, masking a dark transaction as a romantic escape. The plan worked. My wife became pregnant, and seeing her blossom with the joy of long-awaited motherhood was both my greatest relief and my quietest agony. I buried my guilt beneath her smiles, convincing myself the end justified the means. Then our world collapsed. My wife began to fall ill. When the tests came back, the diagnosis was HIV positive. The light in her eyes died that day. She wept in my arms, broken by the confusion of how this could happen when she had been so faithful. I cried with her, miserable, gut-wrenching tears, because I was the only one who knew the truth. When my own test came back positive, I still couldn't find the courage to confess. I had traded our future for lies, and now we were both paying the price. I spent the rest of her pregnancy in a state of frantic devotion, trying to atone through extra love and care, promising her that this illness changed nothing between us. But when the time came for our son to be born, complications arose that the doctors couldn't overcome. I lost my wife that day. My beautiful, innocent wife passed away, leaving me with a healthy baby boy and a secret that now weighs more than I can bear. Rest has eluded me since her demise. Our child stands as a constant, quiet witness to my past. He is an innocent soul born from a dark web of choices I can never undo. I am left to raise the life I so desperately wanted, in the shadow of the life I destroyed. He is the image of his mother, but he is the echo of my greatest sin. How do I raise him when my hands are stained with the loss of his mother? If you were in my place, what would you do? And, is it better to live a lonely truth or a beautiful, fatal lie? If this story stayed with you, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing.
This has been another tale from Echoes of Life Experiences. If you would like to hear more, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for staying tuned.